Happy holidays and welcome to Real Body Talk. I'm your host, Jennifer Kreatsulis. This time of year, we're pressured more than usual to lose weight, go on diets, work out more, to become someone new. Perhaps the phrase, new year, new you, rings a bell. Well, I'm curious to know what would happen if the new year was actually about embracing ourselves versus changing ourselves. And all this pressure that we feel to change ourselves, how does that affect us? To help answer these questions, I've invited Dr. Samantha DeCaro, Assistant Clinical Director at the Renfrew Center of Philadelphia, to join me today on Real Body Talk. Welcome, Dr. Sam.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It is wonderful, wonderful to be with you. Thank you for taking the time.
Of course.
So this topic of New Year's messaging, what stands out to you?
Well, first of all, it's everywhere. You can't get away from it. It's on TV, it's on your Instagram, it's on Facebook, this new year, new you. And what stands out to me is that it's usually about changing your body. Losing weight, getting that gym membership, going on the new diet. It's very weight focused, it's very appearance focused, and that's what we're seeing. And so it makes sense that when the new year comes around, this is where everyone's attention is going. This is what people are talking about. They're talking about losing weight. They're talking about changing their bodies. But, you know, there's a focus on health. And at the same time, we have to wonder, why is health so narrowly defined? Why is health really about what you weigh, what you look like, what you're eating? And this is really the focus. So that's what stands out to me.
Right. Somehow health gets confused with this very appearance-based, weight-focused, external-focused
Absolutely.
definitions.
It's like, if you look good, you must be healthy. Right?
Right.
And so the reality is, we can never tell how someone is really doing with their health or with their mental health by looking at them, or by seeing what they weigh, right? I always say weight and wellness, we cannot equate these terms, right? And so, but I think that in this culture, there's this belief that somehow, if we weigh less, we must be healthier. And if we weigh more, that must mean we're not doing well. That must mean that we're not healthy in some way.
That's right.
And I think, I'm so happy to be on this show because I hope that this can be just a very small piece of how we change this narrative, because health is really all-encompassing, right? It's really not about appearance and weight, although that's, I think, how people make the big bucks, where they focus on that. They sell that idea.
Absolutely.
But I really think that health, there's the spiritual component, there's the social component, there's the psychological component. Of course, the physical component is part of that, but it's only a piece. It's such a small piece of the pie.
That's right. That's right. So what are some of the kind of detriments of this type of messaging? I mean, you mentioned just how that definition of health gets conflated with weight and appearance. And, you know, for people watching, that might be a very new idea.
Right.
Because I certainly, you know, in all my life, that's how it's been talked about.
Right.
So untangling from that or learning to define it in a new way can kind of be like, okay, now what? But let's talk about the mental and the emotional component you mentioned of health. How did the pressure to change ourselves? I mean, there's always this baseline all year round, like change yourself, change yourself, change yourself, but it just kind of ramps up this time of year.
Right.
What's some of the health detriments, mental health detriments to that?
Well, of course. So let's talk about the fact that when we buy into this message that somehow, you know, we talk about the thin ideal, which is so prevalent in this culture. When we buy into this message that thin means healthy and that you're doing well, and that somehow weighing more means that you're not healthy and you're not doing well, you can really miss out on opportunities to really help someone. If, you know, let's say they look great, you might just assume that they're doing really well, right? And there might be so much going on. What a missed opportunity to be able to connect, right? And this really goes also for the medical community. You have doctors who, the patient walks into their office and this is someone who looks healthy by society standards.
Right.
They might not be.
That's right.
They might not be doing well. They might be in the darkest place psychologically that they've ever been. They might be using disordered behaviors to look at the way they are. They might be focusing entirely on appearance, and they might be obsessed and consumed with it, where all other aspects of their life have really taken a back seat. So it's really dangerous for all of us to buy into this narrative, because the reality is a lot of assumptions are made. You know, there's weight stigma, right?
Yes.
So you have someone who walks into the office and a doctor might be diagnosing them with words like obesity, or might consider them quote unquote overweight. And there's this assumption that doctors make that somehow weight loss must be prescribed. The reality is, some of these people don't have any health problems, and they're actually doing really well. And it is very stressful to walk into a doctor's office knowing that the doctor might prescribe that when it's not really even necessary. So this is really dangerous. These messages are dangerous for all of us. They impact all of us, and we need to talk about it. And I know for some people watching, this might be really uncomfortable to talk about. Like you said, it goes against everything we've been taught.
Yeah.
It goes against everything we see on TV, everything we see in the media. And so when you start to challenge these ideas, it can get really uncomfortable, because this is not the message we're consistently receiving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and what's coming to mind is just how these messages really challenge our sense of self-worth. Right? No matter what your exterior is, whether you look fine or you don't look fine according to these standards that we're talking about. You know, I think the common thread, the shared experience that we can all relate to is that feeling of not being good enough.
Right.
And that's what these marketing messages feed on.
Well, you think about it. If we all accepted what we looked like, there wouldn't be anything to buy, right? Right? We have to first buy into this idea that we need to change.
Yeah.
We have to first buy into this idea that we're not good enough. We have to first buy into this idea that we're not somehow healthy at the weight we're at or the body shape we're at, right? So once we buy into that idea, then we feel something. Usually anxiety, fear, guilt, shame. And as a psychologist, what I know is that emotions, when we feel them, they make us want to do something, right?
Yeah.
That's the way we're wired as humans. We feel and we do.
Yeah.
And so when we see these advertisements or we consistently receive these messages, we're feeling these intense feelings of shame, of fear, of anxiety, of guilt. And then what do? We have the urge to buy, right? To buy, you know, a gym membership, buy, you know, some kind of weight loss protocol, buy plastic surgery, right? So there's all of these different industries that are at play that are making money off of our emotions, right? Yeah. So we have to, I think what I encourage in therapy is mindfulness. So if you're able to really take a look at and observe what you're feeling when you're receiving these messages, then you can decide what to do with that feeling, right? Because you're not destined to act on a feeling. You have a choice, right? And so if you feel something, you can make a decision instead of acting right away on it.
Okay, so it's that purposeful pause.
Right.
What, in this space of the pause, what are some of those options that people can choose from, right? Because they might not feel like they might not know how to access them. Right. Because we've been trained to just react. So what are the variables that live here in this pause?
Sure. So this pause, let me first say, it can be really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. No one likes to feel anxious or afraid or just shame about who you are, right? And so if we can just be able to sit with this emotion and know, first of all, that no emotion will last forever. That's the first step. Emotions are temporary, and over time we learn that we can tolerate them if we just sort of allow them to happen.
Right.
They peak, they fall on their own.
Right.
So that's sort of, I think, the first thing to go into you know, the new year with. This idea, this fact really that emotions are not permanent. We all know happiness isn't permanent, right? None of us ever have this moment of joy and we're like, oh my gosh, I might get stuck in this. This might last forever. What am I going to do?
Right.
No, joy is it's the same as, you know, fear and anxiety. They're all the same. They're temporary, right? And so if we can understand that, it can get a lot easier to sit with that feeling. The next thing I think is important is to start questioning the messages that you're receiving. So being able to say, who is going to benefit here from me buying into this idea, from me buying into this narrative? Yeah. What really is the function of this advertisement? Or what is the function of this message? Who is putting this out there? So a big part of media literacy, I do some talks on media literacy about being able to really analyze and evaluate the messages that we're getting, being able to really take a look at them critically so that we can be critical consumers, right? And so, you know, with media, to be able to ask yourself, why is this advertisement even out there and who put it out there? And then if we can answer that question, you might start to understand things a little bit differently, that maybe this isn't about me and my unworthiness, but maybe this is about someone trying to make some money off of me, which is a lot different.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then you have what would come after that, right?
Right. So you're questioning, being able to question these concepts, these ideas, and then maybe turning the inner conversation to a more self-affirming conversation. Maybe I am okay the way I am. Actually, I am pretty healthy. I don't need to lose weight or to you know, eat this certain diet plan or do this thing to be healthier. Actually, I feel pretty good in my body, right? I might not love or like my body even. I think many of us in this culture, there's a thing called normative discontent where you know, most women especially are not happy with their body, and that's normal. That's just part of the culture we live in, unfortunately, and I think it takes a lot of work to really get to a place of acceptance or really being grateful about your body. But being able to turn the conversation to gratitude, I think. What are the things that you're grateful about? What can your body do for you? Yeah. Right? And just start listing in your mind the things that your body was able to do in your life. You know, the memories you were able to make with your body, the experiences that you were able to have. And if we can switch that conversation in our head, it can be really powerful because our thoughts can really impact the way we feel. Yeah. It's all connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying. You're saying, like, take the pause to shift from reacting to reality check.
Right.
Right? Like, you have the power to make, like, to discern. You have the power to, you know, evaluate. Like, you're empowered in that moment.
Yes, we are not powerless here. We have choices.
Yes.
And to even take it a step further, you know, you see these advertisements that are really so unethical. You know, you see advertisements about certain weight loss products that are just so unhealthy. You can even take it a step further and challenge these companies. You know, in this age of social media, you can call out these companies now.
Oh yeah.
You can tag celebrities and say, "What are you doing? Why are you promoting this?" You can, you can tag companies and sort of say, "This isn't healthy. This is really not setting a good example for our youth." And so, a lot of times, what we see is that if enough people are doing that, companies make changes. You know, when they get that feedback, you know, they start to question, okay, maybe this isn't what the people want. But if we're silent, they don't know that. So I think, you know, to take things just one step further, to be able to have the courage to speak out when you see things happening that aren't, that really aren't good for us, aren't good for our children, aren't good for just society in general.
Yeah, things that aren't lifting us up.
That aren't lifting us up, that are making us question our own worthiness.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I have a few questions swimming around.
Yeah.
You know, for, like, what's the line? So sometimes people do, like thrive in this time of year of making some shifts for themselves that are health related.
Right.
I'm only not being disrespectful. I'm just doing this because the way we've been talking about health.
Right.
Right. And there's no shame in that. Like this isn't, our conversation isn't about shaming that behavior.
No, not at all.
Because focusing on our health can be a very positive thing.
Right.
Can you talk about what's the line though? Like when does it get carried away? When does it become about feeling like you need to fit into an ideal versus doing something good for yourself?
Right. That's such a good question. Yeah, like you said, there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to improve your health, right? Or just improve really in any way. And a lot of people do make changes. Maybe they make decisions to move more, to engage in different activities that bring them joy. Right. And so I think that it's really important to take a look at how is this, let's take exercise, for example, exercise and movement. That's a really big thing in the new year.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at that. I think it's really important, again, with mindfulness, to be able to check in with yourself. How is this activity, this gym class, this whatever it may be, making me feel? Not only physically, but emotionally. Because the reality is, if you're engaging in exercise and it is miserable for you, and you cannot wait, you're like watching the clock and the sound of the instructor's voice is like piercing your ears, it's probably not healthy. Right?
It's not serving you.
Although it's marketed as healthy, it's probably not, because we have to think about health in a broader way. So health is not just about your physicality. It's about what's going on for you mentally. Is this something that's adding to your life in a positive way? And the reality is that sort of workout, class or type of exercise just might not be for you. Because if it's bringing you any kind of emotional pain or distress, this is your life and this is your time, and time is so valuable. And to be able to figure out what is actually going to add to my life in a positive way, right? You think about when you were a child and movement was so easy. It was sort of, you knew what to do that was fun, playing tag and going down the slide and running around. And it's sort of like through the years, I think as adults, that somehow gets reprogrammed. And we forget how to move in a way that feels good to us. And we almost have to relearn that and remember, what was it like when I was a child? What kind of things did I enjoy doing? Maybe it was dance, or maybe it was stretching, or whatever it may be, or just running around and being playful. And so learning how to recreate that in your adult life, I think, is so important. So to be able to check in with yourself, mindfulness, how does this actually making me feel? And also, is this impacting other areas of my life in a negative way? So whether it's a diet plan or some kind of workout, class or gym, how is this affecting my social life, my work life, the time with my loved ones? Is it having a positive or negative effect? Because the hope is that you're finding things, in the spirit of improving yourself, that you're finding things that actually impact other areas of your life in a positive way.
Things that are nourishing. That nourish all of you. Don't take away from you. And don't take away from your relationships and your sense of worth and things we've been talking about. So we sort of have to look at the whole pie, and we certainly don't want, these attempts at improving our health to take over. And if it becomes obsessive and you're feeling all kinds of guilt and anxiety because you missed a day or whatever it may be, that's a red flag. Absolutely.
That maybe this isn't something that's actually healthy.
And so then it's the adventure of finding, well, what are those things?
What are those things?
Versus giving up on oneself and making it more about I'm still not good enough. Well, actually, let's think what is possible. And that can be challenging when we're shown in the media just these few things that seem to matter the most. But that doesn't mean we can't figure them out.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We're still members of this world, right?
Right. And there's a lot of options
There's still
out there.
a lot of options.
Granted, we're getting marketed sort of the same things over and over,
Right.
but there are a lot of different options as far as how do we want to add on to our life, not take away from it. How do we want to nourish not only our body, but our soul, our mind, our relationships, our connections with each other.
Yeah.
So it might take some creativity to think, okay, maybe this isn't working for me, but what has worked for me in the past, or what do I want to add more? What do I want to do more of in my life? And that could be anything. I mean, it could be taking a nature walk. You know, it could be, you know, dancing around your living room. I mean, it doesn't have to be something that's sold to you.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think that's another important piece to talk about is that access. It's sort of like you're marketed things, and not everyone can afford the sort of things that are advertised as healthy and you know, advertised as ways to improve yourself. And the reality is there are ways to access you know, movement in a way that you don't have to actually buy your self-care.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Self-care shouldn't, you know, affect you negatively financially either. So if this is having an impact on your finances that's causing you stress, let's again look at this word healthy.
Yes.
Is it really healthy if it's causing you stress financially and you feel this pressure to pay for this monthly membership or whatever it may be? You know, this cosmetic procedure, or there's so many things marketed to us during this time of year that we have to really think about, is this actually good for me?
Right. Right. Yeah. This is such a good awareness. All of these insights you're bringing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
So, you know, we have our media that we're kind of influenced by, but then we're also influenced by peers and family members and colleagues, you know, our social world.
Absolutely.
So you shared, like, you know, being mindful with media and some steps there.
Right.
But what about when you're with the people?
I know.
Right? We're with our people.
Right.
And that can take on a whole life of its own as well.
Yes.
Do you have any tips for that?
That's a great question. And it's, you know, connection is such a big part of our well-being. And it can be so hard when we have the people around us, the people we love, our friends, where they might not be on the same page. Yeah. You know, and I think, you know, one thing to remember, I get a lot of questions about what do I do when my friends and family are just constantly talking about diets, and I've sort of given up on this idea that a diet is going to work for me and going to be healthy for me. And the reality is I think that there's no really right or wrong way to handle this, but I think you have some options. You know, one is you don't have to engage in that sort of talk, you know, and you can make it really clear, like, oh yeah, I gave up on dieting a while ago, but I wish you the best with yours, right?
Right.
You know, and so you don't have to engage. You could also set a boundary and say, how about we don't talk about diets this lunch because I'm so interested. I want to hear about work. I want to hear about your family. I want to hear about what's going on for you.
Right.
We can talk, you know, maybe we can just put the diet talk on hold.
Nice.
Right. So that's another way that can be handled. Another way, you know, you can always educate. You can educate your friends and family. Say, you know, I was reading that 98% of diets don't even work. Isn't that kind of interesting? Have you read anything like that? You know, so you can educate too. And it depends on your relationship with the person and how you'd like to handle that. But to go back to the mindfulness, you know, how it makes you feel, you can always take the route of saying, you know, I just noticed when we talk about diets, I feel really anxious. And I'm wondering if we could just talk about something else.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So be able to identify what you're feeling, and also how it, you know, I think it's important sometimes to give feedback to the other person about how it's impacting your relationship. It's sort of like, you know, I love connecting with you, and I just noticed that when we talk about diets, I want to hear about the other stuff.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
That's great advice. And we don't know how the other person's going to respond.
We don't.
But that doesn't matter.
No.
Right? It's that moment of holding your ground and honoring yourself.
Right.
And it shows you can do it. And then if you have to do it again, you do it again.
Right.
You just repeat.
Right. When something's uncomfortable, it just usually means we need more practice with it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so, you know, the other person might not respond well. You know, And that's okay. And I think it's important in those moments to remind yourself that this person might just really be struggling. And why? And of course they are. We live in a culture where
they're seeing the same thing.
Everyone is seeing, right? Of course they're having a hard time. And of course they're looking for something to make them feel better. We're wired that way as humans. We don't want to feel shame and anxiety. We're going to look for ways to get rid of that feeling.
Right.
And there's a lot of things out there that seem like an easy fix.
Yeah.
So having a little compassion for the people around you, if they're constantly talking about their bodies and their body shaming, or they're constantly talking about their diets or how they want to get this changed or that changed, having that compassion and just saying, wow, they must really be hurting right now.
Absolutely.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, we live in a culture, this is really hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially, you know, with women and the pressure to like look a certain way, this is hard stuff. Yeah. And it dates back, you know, centuries.
Yes.
So, you know, we need to really understand that we're all going through our own struggle and our own stuff.
Absolutely.
And to be there for each other.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
You know, compassion outward, compassion inward. Right?
Yeah.
Compassion for self too.
Right, and for self,
Yeah.
exactly. So when you have those thoughts about, oh, I think I'm just going to try this one last diet, or I just want to get down to this size, because I know when I'm this size, everything's going to be better.
Yes.
Right. And to just be able to stop and check in with yourself and say, it's okay that I'm having these thoughts. We live in a culture where we get these messages all the time. Of course I'm having these thoughts. Like, to validate yourself. Like, it makes sense I'm having these thoughts right now.
Yes.
You know, and to ask yourself, what else is going on in my life that's maybe not feeling so good? That maybe this seems like a nice distraction, or this seems like something that might solve all my problems. And I've really never met anyone in my work that has said to me, when I've hit my goal weight, all of my problems went away.
Right.
Or when I hit my goal weight, I felt totally confident about myself. Right? Because I think what people learn when they hit that goal weight, the confidence is deeper than that. And you need more than just a number on a scale to feel good about yourself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sam, thank you so much. Yeah. Let's just end with talking briefly about, so what if this new year is about embracing yourself? Yeah. Defining it for yourself in ways that aren't related to changing your appearance. Right, right. What would that look like? What would that look like? What's the possibilities? Right? Yeah, that doesn't get marketed to us very much. Right, but this show we have a chance. Yeah. So let's see, what do we want to say? Let's put it out there. What do we want to say? So let's put appearance, weight, all that stuff aside. Yes. Right? And let's think about, you know, a big thing I do in therapy is this idea of, what are your values? And not many people can list them off the top of their head. They have to actually sit and think about it. And one of the ways we do this in therapy is we say, imagine that it's your birthday party and everyone you've ever loved is there. And to think about, what would you want if they each got up and said a speech about you? What would you want them to say about you? And 99% of the time, it has nothing to do with appearance or weight or anything like that, right? And that is one way you can access your values. Is to think about, what would I want my loved ones to say about me? You know, if they stood up and gave a speech about me, or they, you know, they were at my funeral, right? What would they say? What do I want them? How do I want to be remembered? And we can really access our values. And most of the time, our values are about connection. Yeah. You know, and to think about in the new year, how do I want to improve my connections with people? Right? Yeah. Or another big value sometimes is honesty. It's sort of like, how can I be more honest in my relationships and honest with myself? So to get in touch with your values, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but that's one way. Okay, great. Yeah. Sam, that was great. Thank you. You're welcome. Great suggestions. Yeah, Thank you so much for all the wonderful insight you shared and your passion for this topic. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining me here on MLTV. Happy New Year, and I will see you soon.